My name is Clara Jensen. I'm 31 years old. And this is the story of how my world collapsed, how the man I loved chose betrayal over fatherhood, and how I rose from the ashes, not for myself, but for the little girl growing inside me, and the life he tried to destroy. It was a perfect early summer afternoon in Portland. My mother's backyard was dressed in soft pink and baby blue, the colors of hope, of innocence, of beginnings. Helium balloons floated lazily above the hedges, ribbons curled around fence posts, and a three-tier cake stood on a garden table surrounded by smiling guests. The air smelled of grass, lemon bars, and the unmistakable energy of celebration. I was 6 months pregnant. Tired but glowing, they said. I wore a flowing white maxi dress that brushed the lawn when I walked, my long hair curled for the occasion. My hands trembled, but I told myself it was excitement. I was about to find out if the child kicking gently inside me would be a boy or a girl. Mason stood next to me, my husband of 3 years, partner of 6. His face looked calm. Too calm. I brushed my fingers against his arm. "Are you ready?" I whispered. He didn't look at me. Just nodded and pulled at the sleeve of his perfectly pressed shirt. His fingers were cold. I should have noticed that. I should have seen the way he stared blankly at the balloon in front of us, the one filled with the colored confetti that would mark a milestone in our lives. The countdown began. 3, 2, 1. We tugged the cord together. With a loud pop, the balloon exploded in a flurry of pink. A daughter. Cheers erupted. My mom clapped through tears. My best friend, Melanie, gasped and hugged me. I remember seeing someone drop a glass in the background, laughter ringing all around us. And then Mason turned to me. No smile. No hand on my belly. No congratulations. Just a white envelope. He pulled it from his blazer pocket and handed it to me. His voice, calm and cold, cut through the joy like a blade. "I can't do this anymore, Clara. I'm in love with someone else. These are the divorce papers." The music stopped. Laughter died. Someone dropped another glass, but this one didn't shatter. I think it was just the echo of my heart collapsing. I stood frozen. The envelope trembled in my hands. My mom screamed, "Mason, what is wrong with you? Are you out of your mind?" He didn't even look at her. His eyes stayed locked on mine, like he wanted to see how fast I would break. Around us, conversation stopped. Melanie stepped forward, jaw clenched, her voice trembling. "This is your baby's gender reveal." "Exactly," Mason said, like he was explaining the weather. "She deserves the truth. I can't fake it anymore." I could barely hear the gasps around me. The laughter had vanished. My vision swam. I had spent the last 4 months decorating the nursery. I had read aloud to the baby every night, poems and stories I hoped would bring her peace. I had felt the shifts in my body, the aches, the joy, the fear. I had waited for Mason to catch up, to feel the miracle I carried. And this was what I got. I don't know what possessed me in that moment, but I turned toward the crowd. I raised my chin. My voice didn't shake. It was low, steady, sharp. "I have an announcement too." Mason blinked. My mom gasped. Melanie stepped back, her eyes wide with shock. "I met Mason 7 years ago," I began, the words spilling like warm oil over a cold blade. "He sat next to me in a night class I almost skipped. Borrowed a pen. Smiled like the world was his stage." People shifted uncomfortably, glancing at each other. Mason's shoulders tensed. He knew how to charm. Texted me every morning. Left love notes in my locker. I thought I was lucky. I thought I was seen. I paused. But some things were always off. He disappeared a lot. His phone was always face down. Once, I found a search history on his laptop filled with romantic ideas for someone who wasn't me. Spa packages. Surprise proposals. This was after we were married. Mason's jaw tightened. I kept going. I asked him about it. He laughed it off. Made me feel guilty for even asking. And I believed him. I took a breath. My hands had stopped shaking. But the lies didn't stop. The late nights. The smell of perfume that wasn't mine. A handkerchief with initials I didn't recognize. And then, silence. Cold silence. Like I was just an inconvenience in the way of his next chapter. I looked out at the crowd. So I hired a private investigator. And I kept smiling while my world cracked behind the curtains. I have everything. Photos. Hotel receipts. Audio. Mason stepped forward. Clara. Stop this. I turned back to him, eyes full of something he hadn't seen in me in years. Power. Resolve. A fire that no longer burned to please him. Stop? Why? You wanted the truth, remember? You said I deserved it. Gasps and murmurs rose behind us. I opened the envelope he gave me, the one with the divorce papers. Thanks for the head start, I said softly. He reached for my arm. I stepped back. Don't touch me. Mason glanced around, eyes darting, suddenly aware that his carefully crafted image was falling apart in real time. His parents were standing by the cake, stunned. Haley, yes, the woman behind the initials HR, stood near the dessert table, eyes wide, trying not to be seen. Too late. I locked eyes with her. Haley Roberts, I said. The other woman. Mason's mistress. The woman he took to Avalon Hotel. The woman he bought jewelry for, using our joint account. Her face drained of color. Someone snapped a photo. I didn't care. Mason looked like he was about to speak, but I wasn't done. I'm keeping the house, I said. The accounts have been frozen. My lawyer will be in touch. And one last thing. I paused. My baby is not yours. A collective gasp echoed through the backyard. Mason staggered back. What? Clara, what the hell? I turned to the edge of the garden. A tall, quiet man stepped forward. Lucas Bennett. My childhood best friend. The one person who never abandoned me. The one who stood by me through every appointment, every moment Mason was too busy. Lucas's gaze was steady. Mason's face collapsed. This is the man who has been with me when you weren't. The man who read bedtime stories to my bump. Who massaged my swollen feet. Who never once lied. I handed Mason another envelope. A sealed DNA test. You thought today would be your moment. But it's mine. And your name won't be on my daughter's birth certificate. He didn't speak. Couldn't. Around us, people began to whisper, to move away, to take sides, and none of them stood beside him. I turned to the guests. Thank you all for coming, I said calmly. This party is still a celebration. Just not the one he thought it would be. As the music resumed quietly in the background, I walked away, pregnant, powerful, free. To be continued in part 2. The air was thick with tension, even as the music stammered back into life behind me. I didn't look back. Not at Mason, not at Haley, not even at my mother, who stood rooted near the dessert table, her hands still hovering over her chest. I just walked, slowly, steadily, through the sea of stunned faces and into the house. It wasn't until I reached the hallway bathroom and shut the door behind me that my legs finally gave way. I sat on the closed toilet seat and let my hands cradle my belly. My baby girl kicked lightly, as if reassuring me. I closed my eyes. We did it. A minute passed. Then 2. Then someone knocked gently. Clara? Melanie's voice was soft. Yeah, I whispered. Come in. She stepped inside, eyes puffy with rage and emotion. She didn't speak right away. Instead, she knelt in front of me, took both my hands, and just looked up at me. You were incredible, she finally said, voice thick. I've never seen anything like that in my life. My lips parted, but the words didn't come. I just nodded. And then I cried. Not sobbed. Not wept. Just let the tears fall, hot and heavy down my cheeks, soundless and full of everything I'd held in for months. Melanie held me. No questions. No explanations. Just held me like a sister, like someone who'd seen too much. A while later, after I'd wiped my face and splashed cold water on my cheeks, I stepped outside again. The party had become something else entirely, no longer a celebration, but a reckoning. Most of the guests had left, unsure of what to say, unsure of what to believe. But a few remained, people who mattered. My mother. My brother, Kyle. Melanie. And Lucas. I found him near the fence, his hands in his pockets, staring at the pink confetti still scattered on the grass. When he saw me, he didn't smile. He just nodded, like he'd been waiting. Like he always had. I didn't want to do it like that, I said, my voice low. Not in front of everyone. But you had to, he replied. For her. For you. I looked at him. Do you hate me for dragging you into this? He shook his head slowly. Clara, I chose to be in it. And I'd do it again, 100 times. My eyes burned again. You've always shown up. And I've never thanked you properly. Lucas stepped closer. His voice was steady, sure. You don't have to thank me. You've just gotta let me stay. That night, after everyone had left, after my mother silently packed away the decorations and whispered that she was proud of me, I went to bed with my hand on my belly and a quiet mind for the first time in weeks. But peace didn't last long. The next morning, my phone exploded with messages. The video. Someone had recorded the whole reveal, the balloon, the envelope, my announcement, the evidence, the audio recordings, the moment I told Mason he wasn't the father. And someone uploaded it. I wasn't ready for the firestorm. At first, it was just texts from college friends. Then a call from a news blogger. Then a DM from someone who worked at a podcast about modern motherhood and betrayal. The views skyrocketed, first 10,000, then 100, then 500,000. Comments poured in. Some praised me. Some called me cruel. Some debated whether I had faked the whole thing for clout. But most saw what it really was, a woman refusing to be humiliated, reclaiming her power in the only language betrayal understands, truth. Mason, on the other hand, wasn't so lucky. Within 2 days, his employer issued a statement. Something about maintaining company integrity and unbecoming conduct impacting organizational reputation. They didn't name him, but it was obvious. He was terminated. Quietly. But thoroughly. He tried calling. I didn't pick up. He tried texting. You didn't have to go nuclear, Clara. I was wrong. I realize that now. Please let's talk. We can fix this. You and me. I still love you. The audacity. I didn't respond. Not once. I didn't block him either. I wanted him to feel the weight of silence. The finality of being irrelevant. One night, about a week later, I came home from a checkup appointment, exhausted. My mom was in the living room, folding baby clothes. She looked up with a strange expression. There's someone here. I froze. Who? She tilted her head toward the front door. You might want to sit down. I didn't sit. I walked. And when I opened the door, Mason stood there, hair unkempt, eyes red-rimmed, holding a bunch of white tulips. Clara, he said, trying to smile. What do you want? He looked at the flowers like they could speak for him. I lost everything. My job. My family. Even Haley blocked me. I crossed my arms. And? I just want to see her. The baby. Once she's born. That's all. Just one time. You don't get to ask that, I said coldly. Clara, please. I studied his face, so familiar once, now completely foreign. I could almost pity him. But I wouldn't. You walked away the day you found out we were having a girl. You didn't ask how I was. You didn't care what your daughter would need. You handed me divorce papers like they were a gift. He looked down. I stepped closer, voice low. You don't get to see her. You don't get to call. You don't get to explain. You wanted freedom? You have it. And you'll feel it every day when her first word isn't daddy. He stepped back like I'd slapped him. Then I closed the door. And this time, I cried not from pain, but from peace. What I didn't expect, what came next, was something no one could have predicted. Something that would cement Mason's downfall forever. Because a few weeks later, Lucas did something no man had ever done for me. He gave my daughter a name. And in doing so, he gave me back my future. To be continued in part 3. After slamming the door on Mason's face, I leaned against it for a long time, my breathing shallow, heart pounding, but not with regret. For once, it wasn't fear or heartbreak driving me. It was finality. The closing of a chapter that should have ended long ago. I thought I would feel sadness, but all I felt was light. Later that evening, I sat with my mom in the nursery we'd just finished painting 2 days before. Soft lavender walls, white shelves lined with children's books, and a rocking chair Lucas had bought and put together himself. My mother carefully folded another onesie and placed it in the drawer. She didn't say anything for a while. Then finally, her voice broke the silence. You've grown into a woman I admire, Clara. That made my throat close up. I couldn't reply, just smiled faintly and pressed my palm over my stomach as the baby rolled gently. That night, Lucas texted me. Want to come for a walk tomorrow? Just you, me, and the bump? I smiled, genuinely. I hadn't smiled like that in a long time. We met at Laurelhurst Park the next day, under a sky smeared with pink and orange, just before sundown. I wore a loose sundress and sneakers. He brought a thermos of herbal tea and 2 muffins. As we walked slowly along the paved path, birds chirping and the world unusually quiet, Lucas asked me something that took me by surprise. Do you have a name yet? For her? I shook my head. I've thought of a few. But nothing feels right. Lucas paused, then said, when my mom was pregnant with my sister, she said she didn't choose the name. She just waited until the baby told her. I raised an eyebrow. Told her? He smiled, looking up at the trees. She said sometimes, the right name just comes to you. Like the baby whispers it into your soul. We walked in silence for a moment. Then Lucas glanced over. What about Ilara? I blinked. Ilara? He nodded. It's one of Jupiter's moons. And in Greek mythology, she was a mortal woman who gave birth to a child of immense strength. I don't know, when I think of you and what you've been through, and how fiercely you've protected her, it just fits. I stopped walking. Looked at him. And I knew. Ilara, I whispered. The baby kicked, almost on cue. Lucas smiled. Told you. She whispered it to you. I reached out and took his hand, without thinking. He held it gently, reverently. And in that moment, under the rustling trees and fading sky, I realized that sometimes, the right man isn't the one who sweeps you off your feet, but the one who never lets you fall in the first place. The next few weeks passed like a dream. Calm, steady, nourishing. My mother helped me prep the baby room. Melanie helped host a small baby shower for a much smaller group, my real people. No games, no drama. Just love. Lucas was there, of course. He showed up early, stayed late, and made sure I never lifted anything heavier than a cupcake. And Mason? He faded. Quietly. Like a stain finally scrubbed clean. The video continued to circulate, and every time someone shared it, it felt like another piece of his lie was stripped away. I didn't bask in it. I didn't respond to the comments or the messages of support pouring in from women around the country. But I saw them. And I felt less alone than I ever had. One afternoon, while organizing some papers in my bedroom drawer, I came across an old notebook. It was from our early marriage, a journal I'd started to record milestones, sweet moments, small victories. I flipped it open. Page 1. Today he surprised me with breakfast in bed. I cried. He kissed my forehead and said, "We'll be like this forever." Page 3. We watched the rain from the porch and he read me poetry. I didn't even know he liked poetry. Page 6. He's been distant lately. Says he's stressed. I made his favorite dinner but he didn't come home. Maybe I'm overthinking it. By page 20, the entries had stopped. I closed the notebook and gently placed it at the bottom of a box marked Donate. That was the past. And I was finally ready to live forward. November came cold and early. The skies grayed, the rains came often. My due date arrived and passed. Then came the contractions, slow, then sharp, like a distant drum growing louder. Lucas was at the house when it happened. He helped me into the car, didn't panic when my water broke on the way, didn't even flinch when I squeezed his hand until his knuckles went white. We arrived at Providence Medical Center just before midnight. 10 hours of labor. 10 hours of pain, sweat, and breathless pushing. My mother held my hand. Lucas sat at my side the entire time, brushing my hair back, whispering, "You're doing amazing. She's almost here." And then, at 10:11 a.m., she arrived. Ilara. A perfect, pink-cheeked, screaming miracle. They placed her on my chest, her skin warm against mine. I cried. My mom cried. Lucas turned away, but I saw him wipe his eyes too. She had my eyes. And her father's silence. Not Mason's. Lucas's. The kind of silence that holds, not hides. Later, as I lay in the hospital bed, Ilara sleeping beside me in her bassinet, Lucas sat nearby, his fingers fidgeting. He finally looked up. "Clara. I know I haven't said anything. About what's next. About us. I just want you to know, I'm not expecting anything." I tilted my head. "Lucas. I just want to be here," he continued. "For her. For you. However you need. I don't need a title. I just want to stay." My throat tightened. "I don't want you to stay." His face fell, just slightly. I reached for his hand. "I want you to belong." He looked at me then, really looked. And I saw it, the same light I had lost in myself all those months ago, now shining back at me through him. Ilara stirred softly. Lucas stood and walked to her bassinet. He bent down, picked her up gently, and rocked her in his arms. "Hi, Ilara," he whispered. "I'm Lucas. And I'm never leaving." And that was the moment. The moment I knew? Mason may have walked away the night I told him I was pregnant. But the man who mattered most? He walked in. To be continued in part 4. In the days after Ilara's birth, life seemed to settle into an unexpected rhythm, one that carried equal parts relief and anticipation. I finally allowed myself to breathe, to savor the quiet moments stolen between the heartbeat of my daughter and the gentle presence of Lucas. Yet underneath that calm, the embers of past betrayal still smoldered, fueling a quiet resolve to ensure that justice was served, not just for me, but for every truth that had been hidden in plain sight. Returning to our small apartment in North Portland felt like stepping into a new chapter. The space, modest yet full of potential, was slowly becoming a home. The lavender I had planted by the porch bloomed as if to celebrate the arrival of new beginnings, and every morning, as I cradled Alara outside, I promised her a future free from the shadows of deceit. But even in that haven, I couldn't escape the remnants of the past. Mason's ghost lingered in every neglected corner of our memories, a cruel reminder that even the brightest moments can be tainted by betrayal. Mason tried once more to contact me. His calls and texts grew desperate, pleading for another chance, for forgiveness. Each message was laced with regret, yet I refused to let the strings of his remorse pull me back into a life built on lies. I had already sealed my fate and mine, leaving him with nothing but the sound of his own empty echo. In the quiet evenings, I would sometimes catch a glimpse of his name flash on my screen, a phantom reminder of what was lost. But I left those messages unanswered, preserving the dignity that Mason had attempted to strip away from me during that fateful reveal. The fallout was not mine to shoulder alone, however. In the courtrooms and boardrooms of Portland, whispers grew louder. The video of the gender reveal, my defiant announcement, the montage of evidence, and Mason's unmistakable guilt, had not only gone viral but had also sparked an investigation. His sudden termination from his company had been the first nail in the coffin of his crumbling facade, but it wasn't enough. Soon, the press uncovered a trail of financial irregularities tied to his freelance projects, irregularities that pointed to a web of deception stretching far beyond our failed marriage. One crisp morning, as I sipped coffee in the quiet of our small kitchen, an envelope arrived. It was from a local news outlet, requesting an interview about my experience, about exposing the truth behind Mason's deceit. My heart pounded as I read through the formal language, the polished prose, each word a reminder that my personal tragedy had now taken on a public dimension. I hesitated, knowing that stepping into the spotlight would reopen old wounds. But I also understood that silence could only serve his deception. My story belonged to not only me but to anyone who had ever been betrayed by someone they trusted. Lucas noticed the shift in my mood as we walked hand in hand to a nearby cafe for a much-needed break from the whirlwind of legal documents and media inquiries. The fall leaves were turning vivid shades of crimson and gold, a living metaphor for transformation. Over steaming cups of herbal tea, he gently probed, "Clara, are you ready to do this? To tell your story to the world?" I exhaled slowly, watching the swirling patterns in my cup. "I think I have to," I admitted. "Not just for myself, but for Alara. I want her to know that truth matters, even when it hurts. And that sometimes, the only way forward is to expose the darkness so that light can break through." Lucas squeezed my hand. "Then we'll do it together, every step. I won't ever leave you, Clara." That promise, simple yet profound, recharged my resolve. I spent the next several days preparing my statements, meeting with lawyers, and sitting down with a trusted public relations advisor recommended by my mother. Each conversation painted a clearer picture of the man I once loved, and how that man had, in time, become nothing more than a cautionary tale of betrayal and hubris. But while the legal and public battles waged on outside, life at home moved at its own pace. The birth of Alara had not only marked the beginning of a new era for me but had also redefined the concept of family. My mother, with her quiet strength, became an ever-present pillar, soothing my fears and cheering every small victory. Melanie, my fiercest friend, would often come over with homemade meals and words of encouragement. And Lucas, steadfast as ever, continued to be my rock, his unwavering presence a constant reminder that some bonds are unbreakable. In the midst of these daily life moments, one particular evening remains etched in my mind. I was sitting on the worn-out couch, Alara fast asleep in her crib, while I sifted through a stack of newly received court documents. The case against Mason was gaining momentum. Evidence of his financial misappropriations was mounting. Witness statements, recorded conversations, bank statements, all of it painted a damning portrait of a man who had played a dangerous game with trust. I recalled a piece of evidence from Caleb, the private investigator audio recordings where Mason, in a rare moment of careless conversation, admitted to actions that betrayed every promise he had made. Just thinking of those recordings made my skin prickle with a mix of anger and vindication. The gravity of it all finally hit me as I reread the deposition from one of his former colleagues, a woman who had been unwittingly caught in his tangled web of false promises. Her words, though measured and restrained, carried the weight of 1,000 disappointed hearts. "He always said he loved you, but his actions spoke of a man driven by greed and selfishness." Those words reaffirmed what I had known for so long, that Mason's love was nothing more than a beautifully wrapped lie. It was in that moment of solitary reflection that I made a promise to myself and to Alara. I promised that I would not let the shadow of his deception darken our future. I would forge a path defined by truth, strength, and compassion. In the months that followed, my public testimony began to draw attention. Interview after interview, I shared my story not with bitterness, but with a quiet, resolute determination to shine a light on the cost of broken promises. The media frenzy, while initially overwhelming, gradually became a tool. Every headline and every broadcast echoed the unyielding truth that I stood for. "Betrayed wife exposes husband's web of lies," and "From heartbreak to empowerment, Clara's journey" were among the titles that captured the spirit of my confession. I was not the villain in this narrative, I was the protagonist reclaiming her story. And as each revelation came to light, more wrongdoers began to face their own reckoning. In a symbolic moment during one live interview, when a journalist asked me what I had learned from the entire ordeal, I paused. My eyes, steady and clear, fixed on the camera as I spoke. I learned that true strength is not in holding on to the past, but in having the courage to let go and build a future on truth. There are wounds that never fully heal, but when you choose to face them, you transform them into the building blocks of a brighter tomorrow. The words resonated with many. It was clear that my story was not just about betrayal and revenge, it was about the profound journey of recovery and self-empowerment. Yet, even in these moments of public triumph, there remained one final piece of the puzzle, one truth that I would soon have to confront head-on. One crisp winter evening, as I sat at my desk going over case files, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. Everyone who knew Mason had either distanced themselves or been swept away by the storm of his downfall. When I opened the door, my heart nearly stopped. Standing there, cloaked in a heavy coat, was a stranger. His eyes held the same somber expression as the many photos of Mason's disintegrating world. He introduced himself as an investigator, sent by a law firm representing some of Mason's business partners. They had discovered discrepancies in several of his projects, discrepancies that hinted at something more sinister than mere infidelity or negligence. I listened, numb yet determined, as he laid out the evidence, forged documents, hidden accounts, and transactions that spanned across state lines. Mason's deceit was not confined to our relationship, it had been embedded in his professional life, poisoning everything he touched. That night, as the truth unfolded in front of me, my resolve hardened. I realized that Mason's downfall would not only secure my financial freedom and the safety of my daughter but would also serve as a stern warning to anyone who dared to betray the trust placed in them. A woman was not weak. I was not weak. And together with those who had stood by my side, we were paving the way for a legacy of accountability, of justice. In the cold light of morning, as I prepared breakfast for Alara, a simple bowl of oatmeal warmed by the rising sun, I felt the weight of victory gently settle upon me. The chaos of the past months had reshaped my identity, transforming sorrow into strength, regret into determination. Even as the legal battles and public exposures continued to unravel Mason's carefully constructed lies, I found solace in the everyday moments, the quiet laughter shared with Lucas, the tender exchanges with my mother, and the gentle coos from my daughter. I knew the road ahead would not be easy. There would be challenges still to face, scars that might never fully fade. But as I looked into Alara's sleeping face, her innocence unspoiled by the world's harsh truths, I vowed to protect her from all of it. And in doing so, I reclaimed not just my future, but my entire being. As dusk fell that evening, with the city lights flickering like distant stars, I sat on the balcony with Lucas and Alara nestled in a bassinet nearby. The cool breeze carried away remnants of the past, leaving behind a sense of calm resolve. I whispered quietly into the twilight, "This is just the beginning. Today, I stand not as a victim, but as a woman who has turned betrayal into her greatest strength." The sun was already high when I woke the next morning. Alara had miraculously slept through the night, giving me my first full night of rest since bringing her home. I lay there for a few seconds, staring at the ceiling, letting the silence wrap around me like a soft blanket. The peace was real, but I knew it wouldn't last. Because peace, for me, wasn't the absence of war anymore. It was knowing exactly where every battle line had been drawn. I got up quietly, checked on Alara, then tiptoed out of the room. My mom was already in the kitchen, pouring coffee. Lucas sat at the table, reading through a thick folder of documents, legal ones. His brow furrowed, eyes scanning each page like a man trying to make sure every piece of the future was nailed in place. "Morning," I said softly, touching his shoulder as I passed. He looked up and gave me the warm smile I had come to rely on, the one that told me, no matter what came next, I wasn't alone anymore. "You've got a meeting today," he reminded me. "With Marlene." "Right. My lawyer." The final stretch had arrived. We'd compiled months' worth of documentation, photos, voice recordings, expense reports, emails, surveillance footage. But the newest development, the one that would obliterate Mason's public image, came just last week. A whistleblower. One of Mason's former business partners, fed up and facing legal pressure of his own, had turned over everything: contracts Mason had falsified, money he'd siphoned from projects, and even proof that he had placed the blame for multiple failed ventures on innocent junior associates. At least one of those people had lost their job. Another had been sued. And now it was all coming back to him. Marlene had one goal, not just divorce, but full restitution. We were preparing to sue Mason for emotional damages, fraudulent financial decisions made during the marriage, and breach of fiduciary duty. And if the court agreed? Mason wouldn't just lose his reputation, he'd lose every asset he thought he had secured. That morning, I held Alara against my chest as I walked out into the cold Portland air, my steps deliberate, my breath calm. Marlene's office sat on the third floor of a modest building in Fremont, its walls lined with degrees, awards, and framed newspaper articles about previous high-profile victories. She was already waiting with a folder in her hands when I arrived. "I've never seen a case stack this clean," she said, sliding the folder across the table. "We're filing for full damages. I've also sent notice to Mason's firm that if they don't settle quietly, we're going public." I stared down at the paper, at the rows of zeros that would soon be attached to my name. "What if he doesn't have the money?" I asked. "He doesn't," she said. "But he'll owe it anyway. We'll liquidate his assets. Freeze his accounts. Garnish future income. And if necessary, we'll seize the properties still in his name." I didn't smile. Not really. But inside, something deep, something dark, finally exhaled. Good. The following week, Mason's lawyer attempted to contact me directly. A man named Dorian Pike, young, ambitious, the type who thought charm could cover rot. He called my cell twice. I didn't pick up. Then he emailed. "My client wishes to come to an amicable settlement. He's deeply remorseful for how things unfolded and believes that, despite your pain, you might both benefit from a quiet, fair resolution." I stared at the message for a full minute before laughing. Not because it was funny, but because the absurdity of his phrasing was so complete it bordered on poetry. Despite your pain. As if my pain was a minor inconvenience in Mason's story. I replied with 2 words. "Talk to Marlene." From then on, all communication went through my attorney. And the more Mason tried to negotiate, the more he revealed how little he truly understood what he'd done. He wasn't apologizing because he felt guilty. He was apologizing because the consequences had arrived. Fast. Unforgiving. It was almost poetic. He had wanted control over the narrative at the gender reveal. He wanted to humiliate me, control the breakup, dominate the memory. Instead, he lost everything: his reputation, his job, his affair, and now, slowly, piece by piece, his financial freedom. The media called it the gender reveal that ended a career. My inbox flooded daily with support, messages from women, mothers, even men, who had been through similar betrayals and found a piece of themselves in my story. I didn't ask to be a symbol. I didn't want to be anyone's example. But still, I was grateful to know that in speaking my truth, I had somehow helped others find theirs. Lucas handled the sudden attention with grace, staying in the background, making sure Alara and I were safe, never overstepping, never asking for recognition. I would catch him sometimes, rocking her to sleep while quietly humming a tune, or reading aloud to her with a smile that made my chest ache with warmth. One night, as we sat on the porch while Alara slept inside, Lucas turned to me and said, "You know, I never imagined this is how we'd come together." "Neither did I," I replied. "But I think I'm exactly where I'm meant to be." He reached out and took my hand. And for the first time since my world fell apart, I believed that maybe, just maybe, love didn't have to be a battlefield. It could be a shelter. The final court hearing arrived in early March. I wore a navy blue dress, my hair pulled back, my shoulders squared. Mason was there too, slouched, unshaven, his suit too loose around the shoulders. He didn't look at me. Couldn't. The judge reviewed our documentation. The financial misdeeds. The emotional damages. The betrayal. When it was over, Mason was left with little more than the clothes on his back and a reputation in tatters. I was granted full custody of Alara, full ownership of the house, compensation for damages, and, most importantly, the court formally acknowledged that Mason's actions were malicious and intentional. As I walked out of the courtroom, the sky broke into rain. I tilted my face upward and smiled. Not because it was over, but because I had survived. A month later, on Alara's first real outing to the coast, we stood on Cannon Beach watching the tide roll in. She giggled in Lucas's arms as the breeze kissed her cheeks. I stood beside them, a camera hanging from my neck, my heart full in a way I never expected. Lucas turned to me. "Do you ever miss him?" I shook my head. I missed the idea of what I thought we had. But him? No. He nodded, as if that was all he needed to know. I watched as Alara reached up and grabbed his shirt with her tiny hand, pulling it to her mouth. "Dada," she murmured. Lucas froze. So did I. He looked at me, stunned. "Did she just?" I smiled, eyes stinging with sudden emotion. "She did." And the way he held her tighter, the way he whispered her name like it was the only word that ever mattered, told me everything I needed to know. Alara had chosen her father. And it wasn't the man who ran away the night I told him I was pregnant. It was the man who stayed. Spring came in slowly, quietly, like a healing breath after a scream. Our lavender bloomed early that year, just like Alara. Every day she grew a little stronger, her fingers grasping new things, her laughter brighter, louder, the sound of it weaving through the walls of our home like sunlight. Lucas and I had settled into a rhythm. We weren't rushing into labels or promises, we didn't need to. The way he looked at Alara, the way she reached for him every morning with a sleepy smile, said more than any ring ever could. He had stepped in, not to replace anyone, but to be everything someone else refused to be. And day by day, he was becoming her anchor. But as life found its balance, something inside me remained alert. A quiet corner of my mind, still guarded. Still waiting for the other shoe to drop. Because people like Mason don't disappear quietly. And I was right. It began with a letter. A plain white envelope slid under my door early one morning. No stamp. No return address. I opened it cautiously. Inside, in neat, slanted handwriting, was a single sentence. "You've ruined my life. I want to see my daughter. Don't make me go through court." There was no signature. But I didn't need one. Mason. I stood there, heart racing, staring at the page. The gall of it. After everything, after cheating, lying, humiliating me in front of my entire family and circle of friends, he thought he could demand access to a child he had already denied and disowned? I took the letter straight to Marlene. "This is the beginning of something," she warned after reading it. "He's testing you. Trying to push you into contact. My advice? Don't engage. We'll document this." And so we did. I filed a formal complaint. We submitted the letter as evidence of attempted harassment. Mason hadn't filed for visitation or paternity rights because, deep down, he knew the truth I had told him once and would tell again in court if necessary. He wasn't Alara's father. He never had been. Not in any way that mattered. But the letter was only the beginning. A week later, Melanie called me in the middle of a grocery run, her voice shaking. "Clara. You need to check your email. Right now." I pulled out my phone and opened the inbox. There it was. Subject: Mason Taylor speaks out, she lied about everything. An exclusive interview. Some no-name podcast platform, clearly looking for a viral hit, had given Mason a mic. And he used it. He talked about being blindsided. About how I had orchestrated a performance to humiliate him publicly. He denied the affair with Haley, said the recordings were edited, claimed the baby was used as a prop. He even had the audacity to say he still loved me. I felt physically sick. For a moment, I considered responding. Making a video of my own. Calling out every lie line by line. But Lucas stopped me. "You already told your truth," he said. "You already showed the world who he is. You don't need to defend anything. Let your silence speak louder than his noise." So I waited. And as it turned out, I didn't have to say a word. The public turned on Mason instantly. People pulled clips from his interview and laid them side by side with the evidence I had made public. Audio. Photos. Messages. The truth was still out there, and the contrast was brutal. His smugness in the interview only highlighted how far he had fallen. And then came the final blow. Haley. She made her own statement, a long, teary video posted to her personal page, where she admitted everything. The affair. The hotel meetings. The gifts. She claimed Mason had promised her a new life, only to ghost her when things got complicated. She apologized for her part in the story, and surprisingly, people believed her. Maybe because she showed remorse. Or maybe because she didn't try to rewrite the past, just own her piece of it. And Mason? He was buried. Again. This time, by his own hand. Still, I wasn't taking any chances. I filed a restraining order. I increased the security at my building. Lucas insisted on installing cameras. Every night, he checked the locks twice. And still, I felt eyes on me in crowds, shadows that didn't quite belong. Then came the confrontation. It was a Tuesday morning. Rainy. Gray. I had just dropped Alara off at my mom's and was walking back to the car when I heard it. "Clara." I froze. He was standing across the street. Hood up. Face gaunt. Eyes wild. "Mason." He stepped forward, ignoring traffic, ignoring my expression. "I just want to talk," he said. "No. I'm not here to fight. I've lost everything, Clara. Because of you." "No," I said again. "You lost everything because of you." He looked at me, and for a second, I saw something human in his eyes, something hollow, desperate. "I just want to see her." Once. She's my daughter. She's not, I said, coldly. Not biologically. Not emotionally. You lost that right the night you walked away from us. I didn't walk away. You pushed me. I stepped back, heart thudding. You humiliated me in front of my entire family. You cheated. You lied. You used the happiest moment of my life to announce that you were done. And you think I pushed you? His jaw clenched. I wasn't ready. I panicked. I made mistakes. But I can change. I almost laughed. You haven't changed, Mason. You're just desperate. There's a difference. He looked like he might shout. Or cry. I didn't stay to find out. I have nothing else to say to you, I said firmly. You are not welcome in my life. And if you come near me or Alara again, you'll be violating a court order. Try me. I turned and walked away. I didn't look back. That night, Lucas held me as I cried, not from fear. Not even from pain. But from release. He's gone, I whispered. And I meant it. Whatever ghosts had been haunting me, whatever guilt or confusion or longing, I had buried them there on that rainy sidewalk, where the man who once shattered me finally stood as small as he always truly was. In the weeks that followed, we filed charges for violating the restraining order. Mason didn't fight it. Probably because there was no fight left in him. He faded again. And this time, it felt final. Alara took her first steps that spring. Wobbly, uneven, arms flailing, but determined. She walked straight toward Lucas. And as he knelt down, arms open, voice trembling, she giggled and threw herself into his chest. Daddy, she said clearly. He looked at me, his eyes glassy. And I just nodded. Yeah, I whispered. She knows. They say revenge is best served cold, but what they never tell you is that peace tastes warmer. Months passed. Summer melted into fall, and Alara blossomed with every sunrise. Her curls grew thick and wild, just like mine at that age. Her laughter was a daily reminder that life moves forward, even when your past tried to bury you alive. Our little home had become more than shelter, it was a sanctuary. The lavender I planted bloomed twice that season, something my mother swore was a sign. Lucas built a wooden bench under the maple tree out front, where we'd sit every evening with Alara on our laps, her tiny fingers curled around ours. No drama. No ghosts. Just the sound of wind through the leaves and the hum of a future being built, not with bricks and mortar, but with gentleness. But the world hadn't forgotten. Not about Mason. Not about me. The gender reveal video still lived online, referenced in think pieces and TEDx talks. I'd been invited to speak at events on resilience and motherhood. I declined most. Not because I wasn't honored, but because I wasn't a symbol. I was just Clara. A woman who'd been burned, and instead of turning to ash, I used the heat to forge steel. Still, there was one event I said yes to, a local panel about women in leadership, hosted by a non-profit that helped young single mothers restart their lives. It was intimate. Real. Not flashy. And that felt right. I stood in a modest community center that evening, Alara napping backstage, Lucas nearby. The room was packed. I told my story, not just the betrayal, not just the courtroom victories, but the nights I wept silently into my pillow. The guilt. The fear. The rage that sat in my chest like an ember for months. But more than anything, I said, looking around the room, I learned that power doesn't always look like a fight. Sometimes it looks like saying nothing when someone deserves your silence. Sometimes it's the way you pack your child's diaper bag knowing you did it all alone. And sometimes, real power is choosing not to destroy someone, even when they handed you the match. The room was silent. Then someone began to clap. Then another. Then everyone. I smiled softly. It wasn't pride I felt. It was closure. That night, as we packed up, an older woman approached me. Her hair was silver, her hands worn from years of life. My daughter went through something like this, she said. But she didn't speak up. She didn't believe she was allowed to. You gave her permission. I swallowed the lump in my throat and nodded. Permission. That's what we forget we need sometimes, not from others. From ourselves. Back home, Lucas made tea while I changed into pajamas. Ilara slept soundly in her crib, the soft pink nightlight casting star patterns on the wall. When I came back into the living room, he was waiting for me, with a small box in his hand. Not velvet. Not dramatic. Just Lucas. He stood, opened it slowly, and inside was a simple silver band. I know you've been through enough ceremonies to last a lifetime, he said, eyes soft. So this isn't a proposal. It's a promise. I blinked, caught off guard. A promise? He stepped closer. That no matter what you choose, me, just you and Ilara, or some path I can't even imagine, I will always be here. As your friend. As her father. As the man who would do it all over again just to make sure you both were safe. My hands shook slightly as I took the ring. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, he replied. But I did. I want this, I whispered. Not because I need saving. But because you're the only man I've ever known who showed up when it mattered most. You're already hers. And now, if you'll still have me, I'm ready to be yours. Lucas's eyes welled up. And then, he kissed me. Not rushed. Not dramatic. Just slow, deep, and real. The kind of kiss that says we made it. We didn't rush into marriage. We didn't change our names overnight. We didn't blast anything on social media. But when Ilara turned 2, she called Lucas Dad without any hesitation. And when she started daycare, she introduced herself to her teacher as Ilara Bennett. We hadn't even told her our plan yet. She had chosen. And that was the most beautiful confirmation I could have asked for. As for Mason? He eventually left Portland. Moved to Arizona, from what I heard. Word was, he changed his name. Couldn't land steady work. Too many bridges burned. Too many receipts still circulating. Every now and then, someone would send me a blurry photo of him at a bar or working retail, hunched over and hollow-eyed. I never responded. I didn't need updates. Some ghosts don't haunt you forever. Sometimes, they fade into the background, replaced by the laughter of your daughter and the steady heartbeat of the man beside you. And one night, as I sat on the porch watching Lucas teach Ilara how to throw a paper airplane, I realized something simple and profound. He didn't save me. I saved myself. He just waited patiently at the finish line. And that, more than revenge, more than victory, is the greatest ending I could have written. Because I didn't just survive. I built something new. And this time? No one gets to take it from me. Sometimes, the people we love the most are the ones who shatter us beyond repair. But true healing begins when we stop trying to fix what was broken, and instead, build something new with what's left. Clara's story is not just one of betrayal. It's one of rebirth. A woman burned down to the foundation, who still had the strength to plant a garden in the ashes. What would you have done in Clara's shoes? Tell us in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to Revenge Echoes for more powerful, emotional stories that remind us, silence is strength, and the calm after the storm is where true power lives.